This is Maddie Rempe from Cleveland, Ohio, and you're listening to BBQ Central.
Happy to have you aboard here for the really big barbecue show.
Boing. We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Hit me!
Fine, how you doing?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan.
Boing.
So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle. Charbono! It's all about the charbono, dude.
Succulent fish. What?
He ate 54 wieners.
Oh, listen, Lavernius, shut your face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seeds.
We have top men working on it right now. Top men.
And just like that, we are into the second hour. Welcome aboard. It's the BBQ Central Show. We talk about live fire barbecue and grilling topics for 2 hours every Tuesday evening from 9 to 11. Recording all the way through, so if you can't get it live, you can get it through the podcast feed. First hour will go up on Wednesday, second hour on Thursday. So make sure that you hit up all your podcast platforms or whatever your favorite is. As I had mentioned last week, we are also on Amazon Music. So wherever it is that you get your podcasts or you subscribe or stream your podcast, I am there. Just search the BBQ Central Show and away you go. Still to come on the show, R.T. Custer from Vortic Watch Company in about 13 minutes. And then we will end the show this evening where I will unfortunately be banning a BBQ Central Show guest Hall of Famer. So stay tuned for that. Do you have any guesses? If you want to shoot them up on the instant chat, go ahead. I will not tell you if you are right or wrong, but you can know that you got your guess in ahead of time before I make the unfortunate reveal here in about 40 minutes from now or so. Don't forget you can follow me socially at BBQ Central Show on Instagram and Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, /BBQ Central Show on Facebook and Twitch, /RD Rempe on YouTube. Coming up on the best moments of the BBQ Central Show in 10 minutes or less this Friday, episode 159. We're taking you back to January 3rd, 2012. And my guest that evening was none other than the, at that point, current KCBS president, a longtime owner, and one-time sponsor of this show, Barbecuers Delight Wood Pellets owner Candy Sue Weaver. And she took the time out to take us through a journey and a look back at the pellet business, how they got into the pellet-making world, what separates their products from the rest of the pellets. I'll tell you what I found. John is doing an incredible job at doing the cliffhanger of the best moments. It's, the whole production is 10 minutes or less, hence the name. And I fell for it again. I did a little bit of a preview the other day over the weekend as I was loading it in, and we got right to a point in the conversation of that Best Moments show, and I was waiting for Candy to answer, and then the sounder hit, the show ended, and I was like, oh, he did it again. I fell for it again. But he is becoming very dynamic at getting people sucked in to the best of, and then, of course, I'm hitting that whole show archive link that's also in the show notes for the best of. He's doing a fabulous job here. All right, so we're getting to the point that I love here. Everybody's loving the new watch cam that we've had up here for about 5 weeks or so, getting through it. And tonight, I'm going to show you a watch that perhaps you have never seen before. We're going to be talking with one of the co-founders here next segment. But this is a Vortic watch. I've been showing you some out of my personal collection recently. But so this is, believe it or not, well, I mean, I'm sure you can believe it as we get it a little bit more sexied up to the camera there. So you can see here is, what you call the crown. I don't know how many you folks are watch people out there, so I don't want to get too technical with you. But this is a crown. So this is, at one point or in its original life, And let me see if I can get the camera to agree here. So it says Burlington Special there. This was a pocket watch, 70, 80, 90, 100 years ago. I don't know the huge specifics on this watch, but this was a pocket watch. Remember, back in the day, and we'll talk with RT about this here in a few minutes, this was the watch, right? It wasn't what you see on a wrist. But then again, folks were dressing pretty dandy back then. Everybody was wearing better than business casual on a regular basis. They were wearing dress shirts, always had vests on. And then, this is where you saw a watch like this. It was on some kind of a chain. I'm sure there's a technical name for that. And it was in a pocket of the vest, or perhaps they wore it in a little bit of a different fashion and put it around one of the belt loops and then in their pants pocket. But this was originally a pocket watch. And it is now a wristwatch. So you can see case thickness here, and it's on a very nice leather strap. And, this now I'm going to show you something that I really like that Vortic does. I'm a bit of a voyeur, and I know a lot of us are voyeurs, if you will. And if you take off my wrist and then we look at the back of this, let me get a better shot here. They have allowed you to see, let me get it up so it will focus. Come on. Oh, here we go. No? Are you not going to focus for me? Come on. Here we go. There we go. So you can see the, let's call them the guts of the watch. So this is technically called the movement. This is what makes the dial work. So you can actually tell the time. And you take this off your wrist, you can show everybody, hey, guess what? Here are the guts of the watch. And you can see it. It's moving all right there. I mean, it looks spectacular. And, this is... half of me thinks that the numbers should be on this side of the watch, too. You can see everything happening all at the same time. But, oh, my God, that would be a travesty to the dial of this watch. This is a railroad edition watch, and you can tell that because it's got all of the minutes sectioned out there, as you can see. 1, 2, 3, all the way 60 back up to the noon, or back up to the 12 there, and then you got the second hand, or the seconds there in the middle at the 6 o'clock position. This is an incredible piece. And again, this is the back part of it, which is, just incredible. You get to see everything happening there. And, barbecue guys and gals, we love to see the process. We love to be looking at fire. We love to be looking at the charcoals burning. So, no different than something along these lines here, where you can see everything that's making that watch, pardon the pun, tick. Underneath it or behind it. And then, of course, you have this classic dial right there that was originally a pocket watch. So very excited to talk with RT here in a couple minutes about that. Also, let me remind you from a best of standpoint, if you want to talk to John or you want to send him a message about a favorite interview or segment that you've heard in the past, make sure that you send him an email. It's JON at the bbqcentralshow.com, and then let him know what you're looking for, and he will do his best to meet your expectation. Now let me see if I can't get to this. Who could make you eat undercooked chicken or moldy bread? Do you think it could be anybody? Well, let me pause my ad blocker, because everything on the internet anymore says you got to pause your ad blocker. Who do you think it could be? Could it be your future in-laws? Yes. Research suggests that eating undercooked chicken or moldy bread could be the fault of your in-laws. From CNN.com in their health section. We all know these foods are risky, could make us sick, but research has suggested that in certain high-stakes social situations, like dinner with your prospective in-laws or a barbecue at your new boss's house, you might eat them anyway. No, don't. Please say it's not. Researchers in the ever-evolved country of Norway evaluated 17 different social situations to assess how people felt about the consequences of not eating the food we're served and found that being invited into one's future parents' in-laws' home or for the first time being judged at a professional boss's situation, the biggest pressure to be polite and not refuse food is something that people are not necessarily interested in doing. We might imagine that this situation, the anticipated cost of eating something like this, was weighed against the anticipated cost of being judged impolite or rude. In the worst case, as a unsuitable son or daughter-in-law, said Nina Vieften, a professor at the Department of Marketing at the Norwegian Business School. Here's what I say. We should all be so lucky to be me and have my in-laws, because I can tell you right now, there is a 0.0% chance that they are undercooking anything. I have told you on many occasions, my in-laws have patented the triple cook method, which means parboiling pretty much to a done extent. Then it goes to a grill to put on that grill flavor. And then it is taken from the grill and run through the microwave for a certain period of time just to make sure everything is done. There's no way that I'm ever in a potential situation of eating anything undercooked, even when I was courting my to-be wife 20 plus years ago. I was heavily safe. Now, what's funny is the shoe is not on the other foot. If they come over to my house and I serve a pork tenderloin at 140 and it's pink in the middle, they're like, oh, we ain't eating this shit. No way. I'm going to get trichinosis. But I never had to worry about that. It wasn't going to happen to me. All right, let me talk to you quickly about Green Mountain Grills before we get to RT Custer from Vortic. Green Mountain Grills, two of the best pellet cooker lines that you can choose from currently on the market. You have a choice line, you have a prime line, you figure out which one is best for you. If I might make a suggestion, if you're a person that likes the tech, then you might want to check the choice or the prime line. Prime line's got two internal meat probes, you got peek-in windows on the main cooking chamber and on the pellet hopper. Also, you have Wi-Fi connectivity. You can download the app. You can use that app to make custom recipes and cooking cycles. If you want to save $200-300 or more, then you can choose the choice line. The sizes of the cookers are the same, whether it's choice or prime. It's just the level of tech and the extra features and benefits that you're going to get. Now, there's a Prime Plus that's got lights inside the cooking chamber, so you can light it up at night, make sure that you're seeing exactly what's going on. Either way, the choice in the prime line, when you have the Daniel Boone and the Jim Bowie, those both accommodate that pizza oven insert. That's something you're definitely going to want to get, so you can have that high-heat pizza option. It's fun and exciting. Green Mountain Grills are selling through dealers, so you're going to have to go there. Go to greenmountaingrills.com, find a dealer near you, and then check them out. They'll get you educated, they'll get you home, and you'll be ready for success right from Jump Street. greenmountaingrills.com, that's greenmountaingrills.com. And we are back with RT Custer right after this. Stick around, we'll be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The BBQ Central Show. Monthly visits from a killer hog, a cooking guy, a man named Meathead, the author of Barbecue Bible, a grill girl, a bristly barbecue journalist, and the malfeasance of the barbecue world known as the embedded correspondents. Only found right here on the BBQ Central Show.
And this portion brought to you by Pit Barrel Cooker, the most unbelievable outdoor cooking device on the planet. Currently available in 2 sizes with a host of accessories. Whether you're a beginner or a professional, definitely a cooker you want to add to the arsenal. Visit pitbarrelcooker.com and tell them the Barbecue Central Show sent you. You know, I've said it before, I'll say it again. While this show is a barbecue and grilling show, it's not always about barbecue and grilling. And tonight we do a bit of format break to talk about another passion of mine that has burned on and off for 5, 10 years perhaps, and it's watches. And I talk with one of the newest sponsors of the show, co-founder of a company called Vortic Watch Company, and we'll be talking about their very unique products that I have absolutely fallen in love with. So we go ahead and race to the hotline and welcome in first-timer to the show, RT Custer. Hey, RT.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thanks for making time this evening to talk about Vortic and to talk about what perhaps a lot of people aren't aware of. I know I wasn't, and that is the history of watchmaking here in the States quite a long time ago. Before we get into that, beginnings of your company and such, let's do a little tie back to the format and function of this show, which is barbecue and grilling. So are you a fan of barbecue? Are you a fan of grilling or both? Like, what's your live fire experience and preference?
Yes, sir. Yeah, all the things. Really, anything meat. If I could go on the Joe Rogan diet and just eat meat, I've actually strongly considered that. I have a Traeger myself and use it for basically everything that I can think of, including, I guess, most recently. I haven't used it much because it's been really cold here, but did Thanksgiving turkey on the Traeger this year, and that was a really fun experience, honestly.
RT, are you a fan of the Traeger because of the ease, or let's call it the thermostatic control, so you can dial in a specific temperature? I had Meathead on from AmazingRibs.com in the first hour, and we were talking a little bit about some cookers that are coming to market that are having more of a thermostatic control on it, and yet we were pondering how over the genesis of gas grills, not one has come to market where you can set it for 350 or 400 degrees or something in between there, where it would function like an oven. Do you use that Traeger because you have that ease and convenience?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm certainly a novice as it comes to just cooking in general, and so the more technology and aid I can get from my tools, the better. And that's what sold me on the Traeger initially. Is just plug and play, really hard to mess up.
What's your favorite thing to make?
Rib eyes, a reverse sear on a rib eye is my favorite thing to do.
You're in Fort Collins, Colorado, right?
That's correct.
All right. So because I'm a standard American, my geography isn't that great. Like, where are you related to Denver? Where is Fort Collins?
Fort Collins is about an hour north of Denver.
All right,
along the main highway.
Not too bad. Have you ever been to a place called GQ Barbecue in Denver by chance?
I haven't. I haven't explored Denver as much as I should have, and I will add that to my list because I really need to do that more.
Yes, well, if you decide to go, you need to get in touch with me previously. You tell me the exact day you're going to go. I personally know the owner, Jason Ganal over there, GQ, and he will give you the personal GQ experience. And this is a guy who has experienced a lot of success on the competition trail and since branched off into doing his own barbecue restaurant out there in the Denver area and doing it with quite a bit of success and fanfare. So just let me know when you're going to go out there, and I'll make sure Jason takes care of you. To no problem.
I will.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into the watch talk a little bit. So before we get into the origins of Vortic, let's go back in time, perhaps, for a bit of a history lesson. And I'd referenced it a couple minutes ago about American watchmaking. And I think it's very common at this day and age to associate watchmaking and watchmakers with Swiss or perhaps the Japanese. But America did have quite a history in it, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I call them the 10 great American watch companies. But between, I would say, the mid-1800s and the mid-1900s, America was the Switzerland of the world. There were hundreds of millions of pocket watches made here, mostly in the Northeast and the Midwest, by about 10 companies, 10 major companies. But the closest comparison to modern day manufacturing is the auto industry, in terms of, if you think of America right now, and one of the things that we make a lot of, and we make some really good quality manufacturing, it's cars. We make some amazing cars, especially in Michigan, right? And that's what you think of when you think of big manufacturing companies in America. That's what the watch companies were pretty much 100 years, 1850 to 1950.
Watches, or at least a certain watch, I showed it in the previous segment, the one I'm wearing on my wrist right now, is a railroad grade watch. When you go to your website, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth when we talk about the company itself, You guys are specializing, I guess, in a railroad style watch and a artisan style watch, or not a railroad watch. So,
yep.
When does these are pocket watches? So, if we were living in the mid 1800s, mid 1900s, we're not wearing wristwatches at that point, or at least they hadn't come into style or thought of. So, people were telling time through pocket watches. So, where does the introduction of or why does a railroad watch even come into play?
Yeah, so the wristwatch mostly came in to history, and people started wearing the wristwatch after World War I, and especially after World War II. And so, I would say the 50s, 60s, and forward, pocket watches just started to become obsolete, basically, and people were wearing wristwatches. And so now, almost 100 years after these were made, most pocket watches, and like I said, there's millions of them out there, they get scrapped for gold or silver, predominantly at pawn shops. Or people take them to estates, or they get sold in estate sales, or, they get handed down generation to generation and kept in a drawer. I mean, it's a pocket watch. Most people aren't going to wear it every day. And eventually the grandson or granddaughter or great grandson, whatever, decides they're never really going to use this pocket watch, and they're going to let it exit the family. And so there's a lot of pocket watches out in the world right now, and a lot of them through pawn shops, they get scrapped for the gold or silver of the case and the inside, which we call, as you said earlier, the movement and the dial, which is the face of the watch, and the hands, all the timekeeping components. That's trash to a pawn shop who only cares about the gold. And so that's where Vortic Watch Company comes in. We salvage and restore antique American pocket watches and turn them into one-of-a-kind wristwatches.
Can you give us at all any schooling on the differences of the movements? As I had become more into the nitty-gritty of watches, I've learned a lot more. I thought, originally you get a watch and it was something you were going to have to replace a battery in every so often when you saw that it just stopped keeping time. But there's, maybe 2 or 3 other variations of ways that watches work and keep time.
Yeah, so what you're describing there is what we call quartz. Whenever there's a battery in a watch, that means it's a quartz movement, and that's just a very modern way to tell time. It's a lot less expensive to make a movement like that. It's just electronics, and that's how most watches are made now. And that really came about in the 70s, and it was Swatch. Remember the Swatch watches?
Yes.
They really mass marketed the quartz. They call it the quartz revolution. Before that, in wristwatches, the newest, hottest technology was what we call today automatic movements. And they are like these old pocket watch movements, except you don't have to wind them up with the crown. They have a rotor that spins around inside the watch and keeps it wound for you. And that's why people sell those like automatic watch winders that rotate the watch, and you can kind of see the watch rotating. It's rotating like it's on your wrist, and that way it's staying wound. That technology came out in the 50s. And so everything that we touch, these old pocket watches, is older than that. They're all mechanical, manually wound. You have to wind them up, just like, again, making the car reference, just like you had to wind your car, crank the engine up to get it going. Same exact thing. You have to wind these old pocket watches. That was the technology in the 1800s and early 1900s.
R.T. Custer joining us here from Vortic Watch Company. VorticWatches.com is the website if you want to check it out here while we're talking. When I look at what watches are bringing value to the market, or, when you start looking into, they actually call them luxury level watches. Those are all automatic movement watches. You don't really have the ones that require the winding like those pocket watches that you had just mentioned. And is it safe to assume that if you have, something that's like this pocket watch that is now a wristwatch or an automatic movement watch, that those watches are going to be holding their value if you spend $5,000 or $10,000 on a watch, that because of the movement, that's something that is going to hold its value through its life, and even if you pass it down, somebody could go take it to the secondary market and get more of the return on that initial investment?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's two big things to think about as far as if you try to think about watches as an investment, and typically I try to talk people out of that. There, especially in today's world, there's a lot better investments out there.
Yeah.
However, if you want it and you want to invest in a watch, to get something that's going to at least hold or maintain value, you need to spend thousands of dollars to get to a movement that's worthy of being, an heirloom and taken care of for years and years. However, a lot of, besides like the quality of the movement and, it being high end and very well made, which most people perceive as Switzerland, and most of the thousands of dollar watches are made in Switzerland, Rolex, Omega, etc. The other thing is the brand. So a Rolex, a Patek Philippe, and some of those very high end brands, they will maintain their value, or potentially Rolex has actually increased value significantly in recent years, and that's mostly due to supply and demand that they drive with their billions of dollars in advertising. Same with Omega. Omega, maintains its brand very well and can maintain value. And there's hundreds of watch companies though, so it's hard to get lost in that. And so if you're going to spend thousands or tens of thousands on a watch, and you want a Swiss watch like a Rolex, definitely best to talk to a dealer or someone who deals and sells them every day, because they can educate you. As far as I am concerned, I can tell you all about pocket watches and which ones are more rare. That's really what I deal in, is the rarity, and how like they only made 100 of these pocket watches of this specific model, 110 years ago. And so it's the rarest thing on the planet, and that's what makes it very valuable. So I deal in rarities. We like to think of our watches as art, not necessarily a mechanical system.
And that kind of leads us into the origins of the company. So it's a unique story. It wasn't just solely you. You had, I guess, found somebody with a similar interest, or at least a watch passion to some degree. So how does Vortic at least become an idea, and then we can talk about how you actually set it in motion to become a business?
For sure, yeah. So we had this idea on the golf course at Penn State. We were both studying. I was studying engineering. My business partner Tyler was studying mathematics, and we're both nerds and just talking about guy stuff, American made, making stuff, golf, and just having fun. And we came up with a bunch of ideas for different watch models and types that we could make. But the origin of the idea was, how could we make something that was actually made in USA? I mean, truly made in America. Because like you said right off the bat, most people think of China, Switzerland, and Japan for watches. And so there weren't many, and there still aren't many American watch companies today. And so we really went down the rabbit hole of like, what's possible, what can be made here, what has been made in America as far as watches are concerned. And that's how we stumbled on the history of the old pocket watch companies. And then that led us to go into a pawn shop and try to buy an old pocket watch to see if we could maybe refurbish it or just take it apart and learn how it was made. And then we found out that there was hundreds, if not thousands, of these pocket watches. And if we restored them and made all the outside parts to make a wristwatch, we could make the only truly American-made watch on the market, and that's what we do.
So what year do you guys officially start Vortic?
We had the idea in 2013. We launched on Kickstarter in late 2014. We didn't actually ship a watch until 2015. If you're familiar with Kickstarter crowdfunding, kind of takes a while to get the idea off the ground. So we've been making watches officially for over 5 years. And we like to say it's been almost a decade since like inception.
Would you have been able to get off the ground had it not been for the crowdsourcing or the crowdfunding project?
Maybe, but we would have had to raise money from investors or somehow get a bank loan. I mean, we had just literally that year graduated from college. We were broke. We set the goal on Kickstarter for $10,000 because that seemed like an enormous amount of money. And how could you not start a business with so much, $10,000? It's just insane. So We ended up raising $41,000 in the 30 days on Kickstarter. And what we didn't really make any profit off of those sales. We didn't charge enough for the watches right off the bat. However, we proved product market fit. We proved that there was people out there that would spend thousands of dollars on a pocket watch turned into a wristwatch because they loved us, they loved the story, they loved the design, one of those things. And then we went to banks and investors and started raising money to buy all the machines we have now to do it.
So what are you sourcing from a watch standpoint, and then what are you actually making from a watch standpoint to make it a Arctic piece or a Vortic piece?
Yeah, so Vortic is like Vortex and TikTok, a beautiful clash of old and new. I try to think everything on the inside of the watch is old. So the movement, all the gears and springs that tell time that you can see through the back, that's all old. The dial, the face of the watch, and then the hands, that is all antique. So everything between the glass is an original piece of American history. Everything, including the glass on the outside, that makes it a wristwatch. So the case, the metal case, that stainless steel ring around the back, the glass itself, and then the leather and the buckle, that's what we make in modern day. So everything you can touch on the outside is new. Everything on the inside that you can't touch is old. It's kind of like a museum. Everything between the glass is an antique.
R.T. Custer joining us here on the show, and we're talking about the company Vortic Watches. Vortic Watch Company, vorticwatches.com is the website. So aside from the watches that you're selling on the website, what I found unique was, and as you had mentioned, maybe you're somebody that has a grandfather or grandmother, uncle, great uncle that had gifted you, or there's a pocket watch that's making its way down the family channels. You can also be commissioned to take somebody's current pocket watch and then make that into a custom wristwatch as well.
Absolutely. We're the only company in the world that does that. So that's what we love to do. That idea actually came from, we launched on Kickstarter trying to save the old pocket watches from the pawn shops and bring them back. And then we had tons of people reach out to us, say, hey, what about my grandpa's? What about my grandma's pocket watch? What do I do with this? And we were like, well, crap. Like, I guess we're going to have to solve that problem. Cause people are really excited about that. And you want to talk about an heirloom, this is something that now you're taking a pocket watch that was almost a burden to pass down because it's like, hey, you're never going to use this, but like put it in the drawer because it's really valuable. And now, people can actually wear their family heirloom every day. And we have hundreds of customers that have done that. And we call it Convert Your Watch. Which you don't even have to go to our website to check it out. You can just Google Convert Your Watch, and we kind of own that section of the Google, as they say. And yeah, that's mostly what we're selling right now. We're actually totally sold out of watches. We last year we implemented a watch of the day. So every single day, Monday through Friday, we make one new one of a kind watch, and when it's sold, it's gone forever. And that worked so well, and we got so much publicity and everything out of it that we're back ordered for months.
Wow.
So we're hoping to get totally cleaned up, caught up, and start up that watch of the day sometime in February. And so for now, that we have a gallery on the site of all the other watches we've made, so you can like click through, and if you want one like that, there's a little form that says, hey, can you build me, or can you find me a pocket watch like this one? It's really cool. We have lots of other ways to order stuff, but we are currently sold out of instant gratification. Yeah, the sold watches gallery is what we call that gallery.
Yeah, so we're just kind of scrolling through that here, and you can see some of the stuff that has already been sold. So if I like, one of these, then I just click on that, and then I can say, hey, build me something similar to this, and then you start scouring the sources that you have to bring in a similar dial and movement along these lines?
Yeah. And sometimes we'll say, hey, that's great. We're going to just take down your information and get back to you when we find something similar to that. Sometimes people say, hey, I really want, I need a watch by this date for, graduation, wedding, Father's Day, what have you. And so then we obviously, put a little more urgency through that. We have a lot of customers, that, especially people that send us grandfather's or grandmother's pocket watch, and they're just like, hey, this thing's been in a drawer for 50 years. So if it takes 8 weeks to get back to me with a custom project, like, it's no big deal. That's one of the best things about running a watch company is, we're not saving anybody's life. Nothing is ever urgent in this business, it just makes it a lot more fun to run.
Let's talk a little bit about cost and, is this a little different than most watch companies, or this is a little different than most watch companies? So, I think a lot of folks don't realize, like that company Swatch that you had just mentioned. I mean, they own a bunch of brands. I mean, they're a really big deal in the watch brand business and the making. So this isn't like you have a bunch of people you're making, line one is making this kind of watch and line two is making this kind of watch, and it's just boom, 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 and you're going. These are all individual, unique pieces. So what are we looking at? And I guess it would have to be more or less from a high level because it would depend on dials and movements and all that other stuff and what you're putting into it. But do you have an idea of cost on watches in general? And then, how they separate out between, something like this, which is a artisan style watch, and then this one, which is a railroad style watch?
Yeah, absolutely. So our price range in general is $2,000 to $10,000, which is what Ralph Lauren at some point in the last couple of years, he said the sweet spot in the watch industry is $2,000 to $5,000, and so that's where we tried to lay is right in that realm. And yeah, with, it's funny because Swatch people perceive as the cheap watches, $20, $50, but they also own Omega, which is a $4 billion company. So it's fascinating when you start diving into, any luxury industry, right? You think about the liquor industry, it's all conglomerates. So yeah, that's fascinating to think about. But in our range, that $2,000 to $10,000, we have the American Artisan series, which are the smaller ones, either 46 or 49 millimeters. They're pendant set, which means you just simply pull the crown straight out, set your time, pop it back in. Very simple mechanism, not quite as rare as the railroad watches. And those are the 2,000 to 4,000 range. And then we have our railroad edition, which is that larger one that you have. You actually have to take the whole bezel of the watch off in order to get to the lever, which is a safety mechanism they used on the railroad back then, so you didn't accidentally pull the crown out and change the time on the railroad. So you have to take that whole bezel off and then pull the lever, and then it'll let you change the time. That takes a lot more engineering for us. Also, those railroad watches are much more rare, and so those are I would say the 4 to 6 range. And then the 6 and above, then we get into very, very rare one-off pieces, as well as our military edition. The military edition is what I'm wearing, and these are pocket watches flown on the B bombers in World War II. And so the rarity and the history and the story behind the military edition is what makes it that valuable. And it's just vorticwatches.com/military for all the cool info on that one.
Let me ask a tough question here because I'm seeing like some in the instant chat, and I know I was going to get this. You have guys here that have no problem dropping $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 on a barbecue pit, and we're talking about watches, and you mentioned $2,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, and they're like, "Holy shit! Why would I spend that much on a watch?" In this instance, we're talking about pieces of history that you are bringing to a certain degree into a modern world, right? It's not a thing that's hanging on a chain going in your vest because you don't dress like that anymore, or in your pocket. You're putting it on a wrist, and there is a process of conversion that has to take place, and you have to find these things in order to make them work. So do you ever have to go into like a sales process, or how do you explain to somebody why $2,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 seems like a lot of money, but in the end, this is value. We have a saying in the barbecue world, buy the best and only cry once. And I would assume in this instance that also applies.
I like that saying a lot. I never really address, those conversations, but more than just to say if $2,000 as our minimum price is more than you're comfortable spending on a watch, then I'd be happy to help you find something that's less. If you really need a watch for function, or just fashion, you want it to look cool, there's a bunch of other brands. There's other brands that make stuff in America. I mean, you got Shinola in Detroit. They make some really cool looking stuff, more fashion watches, more like Fossil, but a little higher end. And they're in the hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars, so I can, and then you have Swatch and Fossil and all kinds of fun stuff. And the difference is that all those companies, including Shinola even, they make thousands and thousands of watches a year. We made 419 watches in 2020. That's it. And we probably will make less than that in 2021 because we're just really honing in on the best or nothing, basically, to use another luxury brand, right? We go and find the coolest pocket watches on planet Earth and tournament or wristwatches, and it takes a long time to do it. They're all handmade by one person. I employ 8 people here in Colorado, and I'm really proud of all the American jobs I've created. So, it's all the whole supply chain and everything. And so, if somebody wants to buy a less expensive watch, I'm certainly glad to help them find it. If they're on the flip side, Greg, there's people that look at our watches and they say, "Oh, they're only $5,000."
Of course,
I'm used to buying, Pateks and Arnold and Son and all of these brands that a lot of people haven't even heard of that are $50,000 plus, and it's just like, I'm sure there's barbecue pits and things that are all super custom and ultra high end that are tens of thousands of dollars. It's the same thing.
RT Custer joining us here on the show. The company is Vortic Watch Company, and the website is vorticwatches.com, one of the newest sponsors here at the Barbecue Central Show in 2021. So are there any other goals for Vortic this year? Or perhaps a better question is for the folks that are listening either tonight or through podcast over the next handful of weeks, and they're watch folks. They really like the story, and or maybe they have a pocket watch they want to convert, or they want to keep an eye on when the watch of the day comes out. What's the best way to stay in touch and in tune with that so they have an option of taking a look at it and at least buying it before somebody else does?
Absolutely. So we have an email list that you can sign up for it's on the footer. It's all over the website. And you can just put in your name and your email. We send one weekly email with all of our watch of the day options, any new watches that we came out with. We send that every Tuesday afternoon. I send an email. Actually skipped this week because we're totally sold out. I don't even know what to talk about. That's very rare. Usually we have stuff to send. And then if you sign up for that email, I've written a chain of 20 emails that you get every 10 days for 200 days. And it tells you the whole story of our company in written form with pictures and behind the scenes pictures and videos and all kinds of cool stuff. So if you just sign up for email list, you don't even have to go to the website. You can just read the emails and learn all about us. So that's the easiest way. And we do have a bunch of cool stuff coming up. I forgot to mention the convert your watch process. If you have, an heirloom pocket watch and you send it to us, it's on the lower side. It's that process starts at $2,000 because you are providing the rarity to us, and we just have to do our restoration and conversion work. So that's on the cheaper side of what we do. And then, every November we come out with one of these, the military edition, November 11th, Veterans Day. We donate 10% of the revenue of that product to a school in Delaware called the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative, and they teach disabled U.S. military vets how to become watchmakers. Nice. And restore Rolexes and Vortic watches.
RT Custer joining us here on the show from Vortic Watch Company's social media as well at Vortic Watches. So follow them and friend them all over the place. Website, vorticwatches.com. RT, thanks so much for coming on and doing a little extended segment, giving us some history and learning about your company. So happy to have you aboard here for 2021, and we'll look forward to doing it again.
Thank you, sir. I'll see you again soon.
All right, there he is. RT Custer from Vortic Watches. So if you are down for a watch and you want to check them all out, then head on over, sign up for the newsletter, and away you go. And I know, again, as Travis Hale was like, $2,000 for a watch. No, I get it. Can you believe there's some folks out there that wouldn't even consider spending $1,500 on a pellet cooker? They think that's too much. We all have our limits on things. I get it. Let me talk to you quickly about Pits and Spits. Since 1983, Pits and Spits been handcrafting smokers and grills in Houston, Texas. And in that time, establishing itself as a premier brand in the high-quality offset and more recently pellet cooker industry. Pits and Spits setting itself apart by using heavy 7 and 10 gauge steel in every cooker, fully welded construction that you can feel when you use the unit, and 304 stainless roll top lid, and front shelf on every single smoker. Using higher quality materials, Pits and Spits reach and maintain temperatures, allowing you to worry more about the meat than the heat, and providing a fully welded smoker. You don't have to worry about grease or smoke leaking out of the barrel or the grill rattling apart as you move it through the yard. And the 304 stainless makes it heirloom quality that you're going to pass down to your kids. Now, where some companies focus on being a low-cost provider, Pits and Spits focuses on craftsmanship. Quality materials. Are there cheaper ways to make these things? Yes. But they're not going to like their tack welds. They don't believe in cheap stainless and electronics that you can't trust. Having in-house manufacturing gives them complete control of the design and standards. Not something you find brought in from overseas. Their steel suppliers supply materials to be used in some of the harshest environments around, so you know they're going to be able to be used wherever you are, and their controllers are made right here in the States. Having unimpeded transparency into the programming. Bottom line, at Pits and Spits selling on a dealer network, but if you don't have one close to you, call Coy in the shop, 844-650-6250. That's 844-650-6250. Whether you're a backyard grill master looking to cook steaks for the family or a competition team looking to do 50 racks of ribs, Pits and Spits is a product for you. You can check them out online, pitsandspits.com, all spelled out. Or you can see their pits in the wild across social media at their handle, @pitsandspits. We are back to ban a Barbecue Central Show guest Hall of Famer. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The Barbecue Central Show. Celebrating over 10 years of prolific and unparalleled live fire barbecue and grilling talk. And yes, it's still being done from Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show.
This portion of the show being brought to you by Smithfield. Throughout the grilling season, you can check out smithfield.com for tips and tricks from World Championship Pitmasters. You can also head on over to smokinwithsmithfield.com and sign up for the Committed Cooks program. And they are working out the grant program recipients because they are honoring ones from last year. Of course, there was a bunch canceled, and then, of course, the new ones that are coming this year. So we should know in the next couple of weeks when I get Laura Paul on, and we can do a big reveal for the grant program winners. Smithfield.com or Smokin' with Smithfield in the meantime. So the embedded correspondents and I have had great fun rolling out the Barbecue Central Show Guest Hall of Fame, adding 2 classes since its inception in 2018. And while we take the class induction seriously, we also know, and I also know, that the show Guest Hall of Fame is a bit tongue-in-cheek. Not from a guest standpoint, mind you. The people in the Guest Hall of Fame are accomplished professionals, some of the most respected people in the live fire industry. My reference to tongue-in-cheek, more from a how my Hall of Fame is viewed by the public standpoint. If you're in, it's not really affecting your life one way or another. If you're not in there, it's not necessarily affecting your life one way or the other. But what if something happens from a news standpoint or an information standpoint that comes to light that might suggest that due to these events or news, a current member of the Guest Hall of Fame should be removed or banned or something along these lines? Well, I'm here to tell you that for as fun as this whole thing is, the news and or events that are reported will be taken under immediate and serious consideration and then thoroughly vetted and checked. At that point, we'll decide what should be done from there, which brings us to where we're at tonight. And if I can give you a little background, this first hit my radar October 2019, but to be honest, I didn't really grab onto it much at that point, and it wasn't until much later, really November 2020, when it started to bubble up as I was recovering from my most recent ear surgery. I was watching Netflix because I was told to sit in bed for 3 or 4 days while my ear really started to heal initially, and started trolling through a bunch of different shows and documentaries. There was one specifically about Jeffrey Epstein, and I didn't know much about him. I recall hearing his name being thrown around every now and again. Heard when he was found dead in the tombs at the New York City Police Department under suspicion of suicide, but I wasn't following what was really going on and what was really happening as it concerned him. The documentary was crazy. A man who had come to wealth and prominence, but no one seems to know exactly how he did it. He becomes a billionaire's financial advisor. Not only that, he is the one and only financial advisor, gaining access to unprecedented wealth and assets. And no one, and I mean no one, seems to know why this billionaire gave Epstein such exclusivity, but he did. Certainly there's rumors, but I'm not here to talk about those tonight. Epstein had homes in New York and Florida, the Virgin Islands. He had a fleet of private jets, not planes, jets, real money, long money. And did I mention he ran an incredible sex trafficking ring that involved very young girls, fishing them in with cash, taking advantage of the girls that were at high risk, and putting them in a world that it was not easy to get away from. And I'm not going to get into the whole detail here because Jeffrey Epstein is not in my guest hall of fame, thank goodness, and not the focus tonight, but it's worth the watch. Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich on Netflix. If you're interested, you can get some more background there. Which lands me here. As mentioned a few minutes ago, in 2018, we roll out the Barbecue Central Show Guest Hall of Fame. The inaugural class included a lot of people, including 20 one-off guests. And you might recall initially the Hall of Fame was set up in 3 different categories: recurring, semi-recurring, and one-off. That has since changed to ushering in just a straight 5 people without categories at all. One of those 20 folks back in 2018 in the inaugural class was Adam Perry Lang. Now you might be asking yourself how Jeffrey Epstein and APL can be used in the same sentence. Certainly they can't be connected. Not true. Indeed, there is a connection. For 4 years, from 1999 to 2003, Adam was Jeffrey Epstein's private chef. Without saying in full detail, there are many interviews that have been done through the years. For instance, one of the more notable ones was done by friend of the show, Daniel Vaughn from Texas Monthly back in November of 2014. And in that article, Adam specifically chronicles his time on a very large ranch in the middle of nowhere, Mexico, as being a seminal time when he really fell in love with the barbecue way of life. He spent long periods of time hanging out at the ranch, hanging out with these displaced Texas cowboys and learning about their barbecue cooking style. And he had also referenced that that was a time when he was working as a private chef, and the person responsible for his employee was actually never mentioned specifically. And the person who owns that ranch was Jeffrey Epstein, who was Adam's employer at the time. So if you recall, the end of the year segment that I did with Robin Lindars, she had mentioned that there was a very prominent barbecue person that was on flight manifests of Jeffrey Epstein. She went out of her way to say that this is someone that many of us within the subculture would know. And at that moment, I knew exactly who she was talking about. I did try to get her to name the name, but she didn't. However, she did say that it was pretty easy to find out who it was if you put a little effort on Google. And that part of Robin's interview brought me back to a conversation I had had with someone else who had previously mentioned a very similar story. So the more I look into it, the more conversations I have with journalists who cover this topic, what I find is a bit of a trend as you look back. And you can go online and track Adam's career path. And it does show from time to time that he partners or collaborates with, from a business standpoint, with folks who might bring a little controversy along as well. And I can also imagine there being some kind of internal struggle on Adam's part, right? I mean, you're in business with someone who might provide you with great professional opportunity and access. But as you start to work with them and get to know them, or maybe you knew up front, that their particular alignment with your moral compass didn't meet. And what do you do when you're confronted with that? Of course, no bigger example is probably that time that he had spent private chefing for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I do think it's very important for me to preface all of what I am about to say by saying this, and I want to be very clear, and I don't want to be taken out of context or anything. I do not think that Adam took part in anything illegal at the Epstein properties. I don't think he had anything criminal to do at these properties. There is no documentation in any of the research and conversations I have done since I took interest in this that have even hinted that he has been involved in anything criminal or depraved or sex trafficking or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. There is, and I believe that there is nothing criminal about it. However, after doing research and having conversations with folks through multiple sources and other reporters having done reporting on this subject, and having asked multiple times for interviews from Adam himself to come on the show to talk about this specifically, and I still have not gotten any replies back from him at this point, taking everything into account that I know at this point, I feel that I need to suspend Adam from the Barbecue Central Show Guest Hall of Fame. And perhaps not only that, I would be asking the Barbecue Hall of Fame to consider doing the same thing. This is not a publicity stunt for me. This is not a ploy to get people talking about the show in hopes for more subscribers or anything like that. Nor am I a QAnon subscriber, so you can say that. I don't take any joy in doing this. This is something I would actually rather not do ever in any instance. In fact, it would probably be much easier for me to not say anything at all. Just keep my head down, keep moving. It's always easier to not address things like this, especially if you feel like you have a certain perception of somebody. It makes you feel a little weird inside when you have to think about something else. I'm a father of 3 daughters who have expressed to me individually and as a group on a number of occasions their real fears of potentially being snatched off the street one day and then being sent in a sex trafficking ring, never to be seen or heard from again. So after reading the extremely detailed reports from Epstein's victims, specifically Virginia Roberts, that reference her specific interactions with Adam, and seeing her account, as well as many others in that Netflix documentary that I referenced a few minutes ago, and then listening to a podcast called Broken Seeking Justice, there is no way at this point I can work out in my head that Adam didn't see anything wrong or illegal going on during his time as Epstein's private chef. Do any of you believe that? If you do, your opinion, my opinion, is that there can't be any way that he can't produce names or corroborate names or saw faces on Epstein Island or a ranch in New Mexico, or at the mansion in Florida, or at the mansion in New York City, or on the private jet rides that he was referenced between 2000 and 2001. He didn't see one weird thing. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, no matter how many times he says that he didn't see any depraved acts or naked girls. The accounts that I have read, the accounts that I have seen on these documentaries and through articles are very detailed. And his responsibilities as a private chef for Epstein reveal that not only was he not sequestered in some kind of kitchen bunker, but through accounts was serving food to those girls at various properties, as well as being in the middle of taking and serving food to the guests, having to memorize all of those guests' names and knowing what their food requirements were. Also, according to many accounts, the girls on those properties were required to remain naked at all times, kept on a very strict diet, so they kept a certain physical appearance that Jeffrey Epstein wanted them to have, and those were served by Adam. So how can you be around naked girls even once in that kind of a setting and not think something is weird or something not right is going on, let alone being around that for potentially 4 years, and you see nothing wrong or nothing weird or nothing depraved for that long? My head doesn't allow me to grasp that reality, unfortunately. And yes, I know you can go through some of the articles, or if you listen to the end of that Broken Seeking Justice podcast, Adam volunteered through his lawyers in helping bringing justice to these victims. But then he releases a statement that says, and I'm paraphrasing, while he feels bad for the victims and he would like to see them get justice and he's willing to do whatever he can to help, then he quickly disqualifies help by saying that he sees nothing and he know nothing and he didn't see any depraved act or anything of the like. And I reached out to Tara Palmieri, who was the host of this Broken Seeking Justice podcast, and specifically asked her if she thought that Adam was being disingenuous with his statement of wanting to help and try and find some type of additional resolution for the victims. And her reply back to me was, and I quote, "Yes, totally disingenuous." And I think I really covered that at the end of my podcast. And I understand. As we're talking about Epstein, he must have wielded great power while he was alive, and that there were a lot of very powerful people in his circle, to include royalty, have been tied with him. Current and former presidents have been tied to him. High-level politicians and business people have been tied to him and frequent in his residences. Some of those people are still being arrested as late as just this past December over in France. And perhaps laying silence done for fear for his well-being and his family's well-being, decides to stay quiet on that. And I'm speculating 100% here when I say this, but perhaps Lang's current business partners have directed him to also not talk about this subject when it comes up. If somebody reaches out to you and asks you about it, don't talk about it. And I know he has at least one daughter, and he wouldn't want anything like this to happen to her or any of his kids or anybody like this or anything like this to happen to anybody's kids. So the naming of names and the help for these victims, I would hope, would be supplied by Adam and by anyone else who would know what was going on during those times. And I know, Rempe, easy for you to be such a tough guy calling out Adam like this. How do you know you'd be so macho if you were put in the same position? Fair point. However, I will point to my ethics, my morals and scruples, my business dealings that I have had all the way through my professional career that have shown that I am not the kind of person who is going to put money or status or personal gain ahead of doing what I feel, if put in that similar situation, would be right, no matter what cost. So for those reasons, I cannot, in good faith, at this time, keep Adam in the Guest Hall of Fame, nor do I think, at this point, he should be in the Barbecue Hall of Fame, not until the full information is voluntarily given to the people handling these cases. And hopefully this web of illegal activity that Jeffrey Epstein spun up will be brought down completely. Certainly happy to take your email reaction through the week on this, greg@thebbqcentralshow.com. And, I've tried to put these reference links in my my show notes. They're not showing privately, but I have kept all of them. I have them here in a separate document. So if you want to see what I was looking at and some of the podcasts that I was listening to, I am happy to send those along as well. Just go ahead and shoot me a message, and I will get them to you. Again, the email address is greg@thebbqcentralshow.com. All right, before we wrap up the show, let me talk to you quickly about Primo Grills, one of the newer sponsors to the show. If you are looking for a ceramic cooker, but you don't want the round options, you're in luck, because Primo Grill, while they do have a round option, widely known for being oval. So what does that mean? Well, all the way back in the first hour, Meathead was talking about being able to set up true two-zone cooking in order for them to really get high grades from AmazingRibs.com when they are doing their reviews and giving out their rewards and such. Primo allows you to set up true two-zone cooking. Because of the way it's shaped, you can bank the coals off to one side, and you have a completely unfired side on the opposite. Extra large Jack Daniels. You got a large, you have a junior, all in the oval shape. Again, as mentioned, they do have a round option if you would like to go that way, if you just need to have a round option, but get away from the name brands that you might be used to. They also have an extra large gas ceramic cooker, so if you're looking to get way outside the box, you can take a look at that. PrimoGrill.com is the website. Once again, that's PrimoGrill.com. You can check out and see if there is a dealer near you. You can also connect with Primo Grills on social media as well. Typically, it's Primo Grill Nick, but do a little research there or connect with them through their website, and you can start following them along socially as well. That's primogrill.com. Primogrill.com. We thank Primo Grills for sponsorship of the show. We'll be back to wrap it up right here. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Whole packers, full racks, legs and thighs, injecting butts. If you've never heard this before, you might think you found the best XXX show ever. Let's get back to the most homoerotic host out there today, Greg Rempe.
All right, this portion of the show being brought to you by Vortic Watches. That's right, just 2 segments ago, RT Custer was on, manufacturing and restoring vintage pocket watches right here in North America. They take the antique pocket watch, turn it into a wristwatch. Their mission, preserve and enhance the legacy of manufacturing excellence in America. In order to do that, they combine traditional and cutting-edge technology to create unique, quality, functional timepieces with exceptional value. Here's the coolest part. Each one made is a unique, one-of-a-kind piece. Check them out online at VorticWatches.com. That's Vortic Watches. America wasn't assembled, it was built. And check out their website for more info. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up all the way back in the first hour. We talked with Meathead. We talked about the Spark Grill that is out now. We do have an interview set up with the owner of that next week. We also talked about the updates he has on rubs and sauces, Meathead's rubs and sauces. The new MeatheadsAmazingRibs.com. Everything being branded with Meathead. Second hour, RT Custer from Vortic Watches. And then the current suspension of Adam Perry Lang in the Guest Hall of Fame. Big show planned for you next week. Stephen Reichlin is in. We also have Ed Riley of B&B Charcoal. Whole show packed for you. It's going to be very exciting. September 11th, 2001. I will never forget. Until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, this is your program host and proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Good night now.